And so we're praying for rain, and we'll get it some days.
We hear from producers and a veterinarian on drought considerations. Plus, a new well in a unique place to help Nebraskans understand water quality and quantity. Later, what to know about tar spot in corn. And as he turns 100, this farmer's speedometer is known for going well over that. We'll celebrate with a man who's taken part in more than 75 harvests. It's time to grow. Welcome to Grow. Around a quarter of Nebraska's corn has now been picked. Weather has been great for getting out on the combine, but certainly far from ideal in terms of the lack of rain we've seen, something impacting both crop and livestock producers.
Yep. Dad's been in the business for 55 years and all my life.
Ever since the floods of 2019, Ryan Sondrup says good rain showers have been few and far between.
But yeah, it's been real tough.
He took a break to attend Husker Harvest Days recently, where he told us soybeans were especially bad.
And after that second round of heat, it just kind of, it literally dried up overnight. You know, everything shriveled up, and just the next morning it was brown.
Sondrup had his cattle DNA tested for feed efficiency and says you can see what genetics are working when drought leaves pastures in bad shape.
We had caught an inch of rain before the first round of heat, and man, that heat come in there and it just turned it brown overnight.
Cow-calf producers are the backbone of the industry in Nebraska, and the impact can be far-reaching.
Drought doesn't just affect the summer, it's definitely going to affect calving next year too, so we want to make sure that these girls are in adequate body condition score.
Veterinarians say there's no sense putting money into feeding a cow that won't deliver a calf.
But especially during a drought year, because we want to make sure that we know that that cow is bred. If we're going to be feeding her some stretched forages, if we don't have a lot that's there, we want to make sure that she's going to be one that's going to be able to make us a calf next year, so that we're utilizing the limited amount of forages correctly.
While much of western and southwest Nebraska has received timely rains, others remain in the most extreme drought category, seeing 100-degree temps, cooked crops, and grass alike.
And so we're praying for rain, and we'll get it some days. So.
And corn harvest will be more than a quarter of the way done when the latest crop progress report comes out Monday afternoon. As of October 1st, 22% had been picked ahead of 17% on average. 29% of soybeans had been combined. 43% of topsoil is adequate, but most short to very short, similar on subsoil moisture. Most winter wheat has now been planted. Pasture conditions continue to rate mostly good to fair. Nitrate levels are rising while groundwater levels are in decline. Irrigation certainly has made Nebraska an agricultural paradise, and it takes a collaborative effort to keep it that way. Something that will now be on display here at the home of the Nebraska State Fair. Digging a well is messy business, but a high-tech rig does in a couple of hours what used to take weeks.
Because it was hand-constructed very carefully by having somebody crazy enough to climb into the hole.
Gone are the days well drilling was wide open. For 20 years, the Central Platte Natural Resources District has had a well drilling moratorium. Tom Downey serves on the board and runs a drilling business where nearly all their digs are for replacement wells, serving farmers.
We're truly the breadbasket of the nation, if not the world, in irrigated agriculture. That's our liquid gold, really.
But consultants say they frequently get calls from Nebraska communities where nitrate levels are rising and contamination could shut down wells that supply drinking water.
It's kind of like after the cow's out of the barn, what do? And you start cleaning up and catching up from the back end.
The Central Platte NRD is digging this well in partnership with the State Fair to teach folks the importance of groundwater and how they collect data on both quality and quantity.
And this well will be our 117th dedicated monitoring well. So it really will help the public understand why it's important that we monitor our groundwater.
Center Pivot Irrigation transformed Nebraska agriculture. Unfortunately, commercial fertilizer then resulted in high nitrates. Well, drillers say they're trying to help farmers be more efficient while also preserving water for industry and people. And technology is helping farmers manage water better than ever, something we discussed when we visited Husker Harvest Days. Artificial intelligence and machine learning may help farmers take the guesswork out of irrigation.
Put together a product called FieldNet Advisor, and it's a science-based irrigation recommendation tool that ingests a lot of different data streams that are relevant for irrigation scheduling, so things like weather, soil, how much irrigation application a grower is putting on the field. And we take all that information and put that into a quantitative irrigation recommendation that they can easily execute on their cell phone.
You know, but do you find that if a grower is using this kind of technology that they end up saving in terms of how much water, but then also how much energy they're using in all those things as well?
Absolutely. We've definitely seen positive returns in things like yield, irrigation efficiency, and even time. You know, folks spend a lot of time looking at whether or not they should run their pivot, when did the last rain, and a lot of times they can have relatively complex operations where they're doing a lot of things at once, and they have many different fields. And so having a tool that makes these recommendations or makes that decision for them automatically can benefit them in a number of different dimensions.
Nebraska's farmer-owned co-ops play an important role in the economy. Rural agricultural cooperatives serve around 60,000 farmer and rancher owners. Farm co-ops have an annual payroll of $370 billion, employing 6,400 Nebraskans in 400 communities. Governor Jim Pillen proclaiming Cooperative Month. The theme this year is Owning Our Identity. Last year, Nebraska's agricultural co-ops made cash patronage and equity payments of nearly $100 million to their members and total revenue of around $8.8 billion. Plus, there are rural electric co-ops and telephone cooperatives serving farmers and ranchers as well. Later, his age hits 100, but we know his speedometer goes well beyond that. We'll celebrate with Bobby Smith. Up next, tar spot in corn.
This portion of NTV's Grow is sponsored by Acres Equipment, solutions for every field. Acres has what you need to get the job done.
Harvest is well underway in much of the state, but experts say farmers still need to consider issues that could impact corn at this stage of the game. Sarah with Nebraska Extension joining us now. And Sarah, what are you seeing in this part of the state?
Yeah, so not only do farmers need to be concerned about good moisture at harvest time in their crops and standability, but we do have some tar spot that has come into the area. Traditionally speaking, or historically speaking, in Nebraska, this has only been found in our state since late 2021. And we've been monitoring its progress across the state in the last couple of years. And about Husker Harvest Days around that time, we did officially confirm it in Hall County and some surrounding counties to the south and to the direct east of there. So it's in our area, and we definitely want to be paying attention to this fungal pathogen.
Yeah, why is this a concern for producers right now?
It's a concern because, I mean, if you are harvesting right now, it's probably not as big of a deal as your crop doesn't have a lot of green tissue left in it, but it can cause substantial yield loss in those later maturing, late season planted or even replanted corn. I know that there still is some out in the area, and so keeping an eye on those fields especially is going to be important. We typically see this disease come in when the temperatures start to cool off, which we just talked about on the weather there, but as things cool off, we also have longer dew periods on those leaf surfaces. And being a fungal pathogen, they like wet leaf surfaces. So it'll allow for good sporulation and spread of that disease in those late season or late harvested fields. And since this is a newer disease in Nebraska, there's a lot that we are still learning about. We have leaned very heavily on information and research coming out of the eastern parts of the Corn Belt. But now that it's here, we're doing our own research, which of course takes time, but it's also very hard to do research on this particular disease. So management practices we are still learning quite a bit about, but regardless whether you are harvesting or you have late season corn, be mindful of this because it does overwinter in residue.
All right, so what should we be looking out for? What are the common symptoms?
Symptomology for this particular disease being a fungal pathogen, it's small raised black spots on the leaf surface. They cannot be scraped off very easily, if at all. So it can oftentimes be confused with other diseases, either good ones or bad ones, because sometimes you can have fungal pathogens that come in late season that help to degrade or break down that residue naturally. Those are good guys kind of in our book. But it can also be confused with insect frass or things like that, which can easily be rubbed off. So you want to make sure that you get a good idea of what this disease is, or is it something else that's out there? So identification is really critical.
And I know we're running out of time, but what options do farmers have at this time?
Take notes. Pay attention in your fields. If you do have those late planted, late harvested fields, fungicides with 2 to 3 effective modes of action still might be applicable, but this late in the season, it's more of just a throw it on your radar. If you do see anything, think about management decisions for next growing season.
Are we seeing any improvement in drought? Our Grow Weather Outlook is next.
NTV's Grow Weather is sponsored by Acres Equipment, solutions for every field. Acres has what you need to get the job done.
Well, the drought monitor that was released earlier this week on Thursday morning, and of course still very dry conditions across both Nebraska and Kansas. Unfortunately, maybe some slight decreases in some of these categories that we have, especially across the state of Kansas right now. Get a closer look at there. No drought now stands at roughly 17.5%, and on the flip side of that, abnormally dry, 82.5%. Both of those categories roughly a 1.25% decrease from last week's report. Moderate drought now stands at about 66.75%, roughly a 2.5% decrease from last week. And severe drought now stands at about 48.5%, unfortunately a 3% deterioration from last week. Otherwise, both the extreme and exceptional categories, which stand respectively at 20.5% and 1.65%, those are both the same compared to last week, although a lot of that precipitation that we had, of course, this past week, the precipitation cutoff is on Tuesday, and that's when we got all of our rain this last week. So unfortunately, looking a little bit worse across both Nebraska and Kansas. Of course, Nebraska looking a little bit in better shape, but not a whole lot has changed overall. No drought now stands about 34%. Abnormally dry, 66%. Both of those roughly a 1% deterioration from last week. Otherwise, the rest of the categories, of course, moderate, 45%. That's the same. The rest of the same as well. Severe still standing at about 27.33%. Extreme still at 14%. Exceptional category still 4.65% across parts of east central and southeast Nebraska. Of course, can still use a lot of rain, and temperatures the next month or so. Of course, this is the latest temperature outlook that we have, indicating above average temperatures for really all of Kansas, maybe well above average temperatures for the extreme northeast part of Nebraska as well. So temperatures looking a little bit warmer for the rest of the month. October precipitation totals here, of course, the latest outlook we have. The precipitation totals looking a little bit above average for much of central and western Kansas, central and western Nebraska as well. Now eastern Kansas and Nebraska, well, about average precipitation totals are expected, which is always good to see. We will take as much rain as we can get with all the drought, of course, still across the area. Temperatures the next 3 months, October, November, and December, indicating still, of course, average temperatures, which is always good to see. And precipitation totals the next 3 months here still indicating roughly slightly above average precipitation totals for really the extreme southern part of Kansas. Otherwise, the rest of us in Kansas as well as Nebraska still looking like average precipitation totals for the next 3 months. Of course, the next week, the Grow Almanac here, roughly a 68 for a normal high, 43 for a normal low. The week ahead running a little bit cool. Of course, 63 is the week ahead average high. The week ahead average low, right about where we should be, about 42 this next week. And looking at the week ahead, starting the week off really nice. Temperatures in the 60s and 70s, both Monday and Tuesday, of course, staying dry as well. As temperatures start going downhill towards the end of the week, though, 68 is all for a high on Wednesday, and then Just 53 on Thursday, 51 on Friday. Some rain chances are working their way back into the picture. We got a cold front expected to move through Wednesday night. That's going to drop these temperatures for the latter part of the week and give us some rain. Of course, we will take it. Your girl proverb for the week: if the first frost occurs late, the following winter will be mild, and if the first frost occurs early, it indicates a severe winter. Now, keep in mind, we had our first frost, of course, early Saturday morning. Typically, our first frost occurs anytime between, say, September 24th and October 9th here across south central Nebraska. Now, we also had lots of areas that had a hard freeze as well, which is defined as being 28 degrees or colder. Of course, a lot of us hit that. That typically comes anytime between October 10th and 27th, so a little bit ahead of schedule on that, but a little bit late on that frost. So I guess you be the judge to determine if we are going to have rather a harsh or a mild winter. That is a check of your Grow Report forecast for this week. Stay tuned next week when once again it'll be time to grow.
We love to see your photos. Go to nebraska.tv and send to Chime In. More than 75 harvests and now 100 birthdays. We celebrate Bobby Smith when we come back.
Download the NTV News app now. Instant alerts the second news breaks. Watch NTV News anywhere. Download the NTV News app now.
His age hits 100, but his speedometer goes well beyond that. Farmer Bobby Smith celebrating his birthday in style with his friends at Stonehearth in Gothenburg.
We are going to award you an honorary lifetime membership to Archway Corvette Club.
And we met Bobby just a couple of years ago when he was still on the combine at the young age of 95.
Start it up and sit back.
Pretty simple.
For a guy who doesn't like to slow down, the hardest thing Bobby Smith has to do during harvest is maintain speed with the grain cart.
Okay, I'll just wait for you down there.
Waiting is something Bobby doesn't like to do. He likes to be first, traveling more than 400 miles to get an early combine back in what he figures was 1943.
It was a Massey Harris, and it cost $3,200. And I went to the harvest because the only way I could get it is I had to go to the harvest.
They called it the Harvest Brigade. To get a combine during wartime, Bobby had to hit the road, harvesting crops from Texas to North Dakota. Bobby says he sold that first combine for a profit, the first of dozens he's operated.
I've had to have 65 or 70.
For 75 years in a row, maybe 76, Bobby's picked corn, never missing a year.
Started when I was 20, 95 now.
Yeah? You don't look 95.
Well, I feel pretty good, too.
He has no intentions on stopping.
If I'm not in here, I'm just driving around seeing what everybody else is doing.
His son looks on from their farm just outside Arnold in Custer County. Bobby and his son, Robbie.
My mother said it's not Robert, it's Bobby.
Successful on the farm and the open road, where his speedometer exceeds his age.
The year I was 90 years old, I won the 90-mile-an-hour race. That have you heard of the race, SORC race that raises up through the? I won that.
Cars screamed down the highway during the Sandhills Open Road Challenge. Unfortunately for Bobby, organizers of his hometown race put in an age limit of 85.
So that took me out to pasture.
But it hasn't stopped him, and neither has the state patrol.
I shouldn't say this over the mic, but I run a 185 here this summer someplace.
You got your Corvette up to 185 someplace.
Yeah, yep.
Whether a red Corvette or John Deere green, Bobby doesn't like to take it slow unless he's playing bridge.
My mind, it keeps me thinking all the time, so I play that a lot.
His proud son captured him on Twitter.
What did he say, 121,000 hits? Somebody from Australia even hit it.
His social media moment comes on the same ground he's farmed all his life. And as he climbs down the ladder for harvest number 75, another combine, another harvest, not far off.
Ready to roll, and here comes the birthday boy.
And Bobby's celebrating with a Corvette party on his birthday. Congratulations, Bobby, on birthday number 100. Well, thanks for joining us. Just our 10th anniversary of Grow being on the air. And you can catch us, of course, next time as we see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow.
NTV's Grow is brought to you by Aurora Cooperative. Tougher together, Aurora and you.